What is up, YouTube? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Prestige Reef Dork Show, which is a weekly YouTube live stream and podcast available wherever you get your podcasts, where we discuss just general fish and coral chat and the news of the week in the reef keeping hobby. Before, at the end, we then get on to the headline topic, which is what you've possibly clicked on to look at today. The topic today is ranch raised fish. And if that's all you've clicked on to watch, you need to look at the timestamps at the bottom of the video and you will be able to click on and skip through all our nonsense. For everybody else, hello, I'm Alex, aka Reef Dork. And with me, as always, is Ryan from the UK's #1 coral selling website, prestigereef.co.uk. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad, yeah.
Take a breath. I enjoyed your disclaimer.
But because people get mad at me, because a lot of the topics lately we've had are actually quite intriguing.
Yeah.
So people click on it, and I think it invites people who don't normally watch the stream. People click on it because they're like, "Oh, cool! What's the brightest coral?"
Yeah.
And because we do the same format every week, you don't expect to see that if you're a first-time viewer. Yeah. And I think actually people will those people will probably just skip past the first 30 seconds intro, probably skip past the bit where I'm talking to explain that, and then miss all that anyway. But
basically, I just skip the first hour and a half of the video, and you're good, and you'll be good.
Yeah, basically. But because it's, people get mad at me, and I want to help everybody get to the bit they want to watch. If that's all they want to watch, cool. But anyway,
someone just said it looks like I've just got up. I just put eye drops in. That might be why.
You haven't got gel in your hair.
Yeah, I do.
Have you? I guess. The wrong person.
Wrong person to ask.
In that case, yeah. But anyway, so Ryan, how are you?
I'm about the same as when you asked about 2 minutes ago. I'm still just as good. we've
you know what my memory's like.
Yes,
I couldn't remember if I asked or if you just went into the other stuff.
How come everyone's saying I look tired? Jamie's saying it now as well. I'm gonna put that camera setting on. You know, the one that makes it look like I'm wearing makeup.
Yeah. You need to put coffee in your eyeballs. Is that what you do when you're tired? I think that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
But anyway, so we'll talk about ranch raised fish later. But for now, how's your week in reefing been, Ryan? What have you been up to?
Well, so it's been very hot in the UK this week, especially down where I live. I'm assuming it's been, generally speaking, where I live is hotter than the rest of the UK because I'm in the south. And because of that, I have not shipped any corals this whole week.
Right.
So that basically has given me a week off of shipping, but I've been doing other stuff. So I've been doing some maintenance stuff. And last week you shamed me because of my MP40s and how I don't ever clean them. And I post on my Instagram account and Facebook account a picture of what MP40 looks like when you haven't cleaned it for 3 years. Interestingly enough, it was dirty on the outside, but when I opened it up, because I didn't even know you could open them until you said there's clips on them, that you did like a public service telling me that I could do that.
I actually tagged that particular section of the video, and I called it "How to Clean Vortic MP40s" in case people, because sometimes when you Google it, it brings up a short section of a video, so it might bring that up. But anyway,
yeah, it was surprisingly easy. In fact, having really done it, I thought to myself, why have I not done this for the last 3 years? Yeah. Anyway, there was now with our tanks, there are sometimes some unexpected side effects of things that we do. A perfect example of this is if you put carbon in your tank, the carbon makes the water clearer, which then increases the PAR for your lights. Now, there has been an unexpected side effect for me cleaning the MP40s. And Alex had a go a minute ago at trying to guess what that side effect could be. I'm interested in the chat. What do you think? What negative side effect could there have been from me just cleaning my power heads? So, do you want to spend a couple of minutes guessing?
Yeah. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Guess what the side effect would have been. I couldn't guess this. I guessed a few things. I won't prompt because I'll see what people say.
Yeah.
I guessed a few things because I noticed things when I clean mine. Although I haven't cleaned mine for a couple of months now, and they're dirty. Yeah. But yeah, interested to see. So because you clean the power. What else can you tell us before whilst people guess?
Okay, nothing died. And No, so it's not that. Someone said algae bloom a minute ago, so that's definitely not. No polyps have been blown off or anything like that. It's more of something. It's to do with the fish. There you go. That narrows it down. So it's nothing to do with the corals. And if they haven't died, what's happened?
Got stuck to them? I don't know.
Nope.
Well,
Nope. What is more flow in a tank for a fish?
good.
It's more exercise. Yes.
Did they start swimming up next to it?
No, Mike. So what's actually happened? The negative side effect is my copper band has got thinner.
Oh, how funny!
You would never expect that, would you?
Okay.
You couldn't possibly think if someone said to you in a week's time you're going to do something, and in a week's time your copper band's going to be thinner. You'll go, nah, it's not going to be that. So I'm putting the same input of food in, but because they've now got more exercise, it's affected how thin they are. So I've now had to increase my food to get them back up to a healthy weight.
Funny. And actually, because it's been 3 years since you cleaned them. Well, you've ever cleaned them, and you've had them 3 years.
Yeah.
So and that it makes a significant difference.
It made a massive difference.
Yeah.
To be fair, you did guess a couple of them. You said that some of the water would have splashed out, which did happen.
Yeah.
And you said that like some detritus have been blown. Yeah, things. Those were all normal things that did happen. But as I said, with our tanks, whenever we do anything, there is often an unexpected side effect. I'm wondering what the side effect is going to be from removing all those asterinas, because obviously we took out thousands of them.
You get a load of algae.
Well, I did wonder if that's going to happen, but so far there hasn't been any negative. No. And they really have been obliterated now. So
I wouldn't have thought you'll get a negative of that. To be fair, I don't know. It's weird because my water box tank, I find I almost never clean the algae off the glass.
Yeah,
it's really weird. Like my main tank, twice a week I'm cleaning the algae off the glass, and that's as an average. That's what I've always had to do on any tank I've had.
Yeah,
the water box, for some reason, algae does grow on it, but only a tiny little thin layer, tiny bits, and you can leave it for a month, scrape it off, and it's easy. It comes off straight away. It's not like really hard. So I've got asterinas in there. I do wonder maybe they're doing something. I don't know what it is because I feed almost a cube a day.
Yeah,
and it's like my levels are quite high, so it doesn't make sense as to why.
Are they higher in the other tank?
No, they're about the same they're a tiny bit higher in this tank, but they're about the same, more or less.
See, in the coral farm, you have to clean the SPS tank twice as much as you have to clean the LPS tank, and I don't know why. Like you have to clean the glass twice as much.
Well, this is LPS tank, so okay. Yeah, I don't know.
So there was the other thing I've done. So that's the first thing of my list of things. The next thing is that I have started quarantining fish for the water box tank. So I've done, I think I said last week, I've set up it's about 80 liters of tank, but it can hold 70 liters of water. I'm proactively treating with copper power and Metroplex for pretty much most of the main serious diseases: white spot, velvet, Bruxella, and they're also going to have a flukes bath as well. So with RO water. Just to see if I've never tried this approach. It's never been as I've said before. Sometimes you don't do these things until you've been burnt, and I got burnt recently, as everyone knows. And it's been quite an interesting process to do this. Because I'm starting to use test kits I didn't use before, and the fish, you have to monitor the fish to see how they're reacting. Anyone that is going to quarantine their fish, this is number one thing that I want you to take away from this. Ramp up the copper slowly. Don't put it in full, because I tried this at first, because this is what apparently you see it on the forums and stuff like that, saying, yeah, put it in at 2.5, it'll be fine. Put the fish in. They did not like it. They did not like it at all. So I lowered it, and then when you lower it and then you bring it back up to 2.5, then they were fine. So that's
what you would expect as well. So I'm surprised there are so many people saying it's fine.
Yeah, it's well, I think obviously if there's like an outbreak, so they're saying just do this, just like you've got something serious you need to deal with.
Right, okay.
Just put it in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And there are some people that say ramp it up for more sensitive fish. I'm only doing clownfish, so you would think that they would be the least sensitive fish you can get.
When you say they didn't like it, were they like heavy breathing on their side? What
yeah.
they doing?
Yeah, heavy breathing, and also they wouldn't eat anything.
Right. Okay.
And so almost immediately, as I said, when I was just like, they basically just stopped moving too much, and I was like, right, that's it. I'm not happy with this, because I'm quite cautious because I've not done this before. There will be a video. Yeah, there will be a video on what I'm doing, the same as what I'm doing with other tanks and stuff like that. But it's not going to be like a super in-depth,
not a how-to guide or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Humble Fish has already done them.
Yeah.
So what, like,
but it's useful watching people do things for the first time.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I'm glad. Let's put it this way. I am very glad I started with clownfish, because I considered going, I'm going to put the angelfish in there first. I'm never taking that angelfish out the coral farm.
Yeah.
When a fish costs that much money, you don't want to move it. So, but yeah, I'm glad, because what I will do going forward is, when I do eventually put the angelfish in there will be no copper in there at all. I will start it, move it in there, feed it for a couple of days so that it's comfortable and it knows, and then gradually, bit by bit, start to dose the copper, so that it's a far more gentle process than just picking up and throwing it in.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised that the clownfish wouldn't eat. They wouldn't eat for a couple of days,
Right.
which was even after that. After I lowered it, they still wouldn't eat.
So if you'd have tried that with some more sensitive fish that are delicate to copper, like antheas, I think are, then
well antheas, you use a lower dose for antheas and mandarins and things like that.
I think as well.
Yes, wrasses are another one. Yes. So as I said, people say for some things you can do it where you can just put them in, and for some things you can't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I picked a fish I thought I didn't have to ramp up for, and I realized that you probably should ramp up for all of them.
How long are you doing the treatment for?
So, generally speaking, what people do when they do a quarantine is they do it for 14 days, and then where they're actively treating for at full level for copper, for all the different diseases. And then after that 14 days, they can either take it out and put it into an observation tank with nothing in it before they put it in the main tank, or they leave it for a whole 30 days in that one tank. So,
right. Have you decided what you're going to do? Or
I will probably leave it for the 30 days, because alternatively, you've just got your beer. I saw the smile on your face. I'm like, that can only be that one thing.
We didn't have any beer in, and I was like, go to the shop.
Really?
I like joking, and
I know, but that happened. To be fair, that happened yesterday with me. Marina we were watching TV. She went, fancy some ice cream. I went, does that mean you want me to go get you some ice cream?
Yeah.
And she went, yeah. So
wife of the year. Anyway, so you 30 days full system, or drain.
So I will probably leave it for the 30 days.
Okay. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to be interested watching you do it, because you have the same opinion of quarantine as me. So I'm really interested to see how you get on. I
can see how it would work. Remember, quarantine has come a long way since we tried it, I think. I don't know about your experience, but since we tried it,
8 years.
I last did it probably 12 years ago, and I didn't do it properly. You actually feel like, before, you didn't feel like you were doing anything. You sort of just put it in there, and you didn't. Whereas now you know exactly what's doing. You know the life cycle of the diseases, and you know why you're doing what things and what they're treating.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're actually doing something good.
That's interesting, because the it's when you're new to the hobby, you don't know squat, and you suddenly realize there's a ton to learn. But actually, I do wonder if now I'm a bit more aware of the sort of things you need to look out for.
Yeah.
Even though quarantine would be new to me, maybe I'd have more success with it.
Yeah, I think
I've thought about that before.
Yeah, as I didn't think that I would enjoy it, and I've actually quite enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I don't, because the tank's so easy. You set the tank up, you take a little bit of filter media out of the water box, move it in there, so it's cycled already. It's just a very, very easy process. And then the tank will probably take, I don't know, 5 minutes to drain down, and then start again.
Are you going to quarantine every single fish you put in that tank?
Yes.
Is that the plan? Yeah.
Yes. So these fish came from, even though they came from the coral farm, so I already know that they're fine because they've been in there for years and years and years. I just wanted to start. This was a test.
Yeah.
As I said, I've never treated fish with copper before, like not like when they haven't got a disease, not when it was an emergency situation. So I just thought I'll give it a go and see how they react. And as I said, I've learned something just from doing these 2 clownfish.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to put these clownfish in there, if I'm honest, because they're just normal clowns. They're just one black and one orange.
Okay.
So whereas the clownfish you have are a bit more, they're a bit nicer than just normal ones.
I think that's called snowflakes. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the ones down in your tank.
Oh yeah, the Da Vinci's. Yeah, they're really cool. Actually, I like them. I think I prefer the snowflakes, but they're cool. Actually, I really like fancy clowns. These ones have chilled out since they've moved from here to here from the Fluval Evo.
Yeah,
they were aggressive as hell in the Fluval, but now they're just a bit more like whatever. But okay, so this would be a test, whatever. They might not go in, but this is your test.
Yeah, it's literally just to see how things react, because it's nerve-wracking. Like I might put my purple tang in there, which I've had for 15 years. I don't want to put her through. I'm nervous, basically. Quarantine can kill fish, as you know, if done incorrectly, and even probably sometimes even if it's done correctly.
It's easy to do things wrong first time around as well, isn't it? Even though you've been in a hobby for a long time, like with the dose. Yeah, you put in a ton or like full dose straight away.
Yeah,
and it didn't go well. So that's why you're nervous. It's easy to make mistakes.
Someone in the chat has mentioned about quarantine coral. I've heard people talk about this. Even Than from Tidal Gardens the other day was talking about on one of the BRS what their chats. Yeah, he said it's incredibly, it's not impossible, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, exactly.
To become a problem. There's things which would, like with the fish, where you go, it's like seriously, like there's a high probability. Let's say there's a 5% chance that you might introduce something when you introduce a new fish. Whereas if you introduce a coral, it's like 0.00001% chance or something like that.
Yeah.
So 5% is like 1 in 20.
People often mention that when you're talking about quarantining, people will often say, "Oh, well, you've got anything wet, you've got to quarantine. So you've got to quarantine snails, crabs, everything." And the theory is that there's with white spot, I think it goes through trophont and theron stage where it's free swimming and then it encrusts onto whatever. So it could encrust onto the shell of a snail. Yeah, you put that in your tank and then it goes into the water and you're stuffed. So in theory, you should watch out. And actually, it can go through the air. some parasites. Yeah. So in theory, you'd have to have your tank at least 10 meters away or whatever. So that you can take it to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And it depends how much effort you want to put in. But realistically, I think 99.9% is achieved by quarantining the fish. And if you're going to quarantine everything, that to me that's over the top. I can understand why some people might do it, but I could consider quarantine. There's no way I'd consider quarantining corals for the purposes of avoiding white spot.
I'm not trying to get to be 100%. I'm trying to make sure I don't have the same issue as I had before. And the issues that I had before were, I believe it was Brook, but there are 2 main ones. Brook and Velvet are the bad ones. There are plenty of people that have white spot. You've probably got white spot in your tank and it doesn't affect you on a day-to-day basis. So white spot is manageable, whereas the other 2 are you get it and it's bad generally. So if I avoid those 2, I'm happy. And anything else is an extra. Again, with regards to flukes, most people have flukes in their tank. They don't really affect the fish, healthy fish anyway. But if I'm doing this part of the process, I might as well do that one extra step, which takes 5 minutes to dip it in RO water.
Oh, it's a freshwater dip. I was going to say, is it fluconazole or there's some fluke solve?
You can literally do it with fresh water. You can also do it with
praziquantel?
There are a few different ones, but
there's some kind of bath that you give it.
There's one that is just not it's like bleach or something. It might not be bleach. Don't say it's bleach if it's not.
But I'm
pretty sure it's hydrogen peroxide. I'm pretty sure.
Hydrogen peroxide, yeah. That's a more recent thing. No, it's not. It's what you.
Okay, although I think it's what you
bleach your hair. But this is the thing. So you and I haven't researched this for a long time. So we just sound like morons naming random potions we've heard of.
Yes. Yeah. No.
But okay.
Yeah, it is hydrogen peroxide. See,
H2O2. You can use that to dip coral frag plugs in, and it like destroys the algae. It's wicked.
Yeah, they were saying some people dip their whole zoas in them, and the frag plugs come out completely white and clean, and the zoas are still fine.
Yeah, so BRS Ryan was talking about that the other day. I've done it a couple of times, but I don't do it routinely because it freaks me out. I did it on a Monty, and it stripped the Monty.
Yeah,
it was one I had like 10 frags off, so I didn't really care. But I wanted to try to see what it did, and I won't do it with acros. Zoa's probably fine, but I don't think I'd only really be bothered if I got a frag plug that had just like covered in crappy algae and looked a bit nasty. And even I wouldn't buy that coral.
So. Do you think we're at the stage where you start to experiment, because like with things? So you just said, look, I've got 10 of that one piece of coral, so you're going, I'll give it a go, see what happens.
Yeah, because
some people wouldn't want to do that
to a degree, but I tend to avoid stuff like that as a general rule. But although in fact that's a question that we'll come on to for a members question later, so we'll come back onto that. But anyway, so you're quarantining.
Yes,
and we're all looking forward to the video on it.
Yeah, hopefully it goes well.
Yeah.
What about you? What's happening in your week of reefing?
So I've my week of reefing has been equipment based, of course.
Okay, I'll leave for 5 minutes and come back.
I'll talk to everybody else. So there's two things. You'll never guess what one of them is, but the first one is this bad boy.
I knew you were going to say that because I saw you post about it.
Indeed. So I was sent this by Reef Factory. This is a smart tester, and it tests it tests one parameter at a time.
Yeah.
But it can test nitrate or phosphate or magnesium or calcium.
Yeah.
I've only got the phosphate reagents, and that's all it's not all I'm really interested in. I'd like to know all of those, but that's the main thing I'm interested in. And this is part of my plan. I've been talking about getting my phosphate down for about 35 years.
Yeah.
But this is a part of the plan that is actually going to really help, because it's this it doesn't tell you anything that you can't work out from manual testing.
Yeah.
It just tells you what your phosphate.
It was pretty accurate from what I saw.
So the first test I did, with most of these things, when you set them up, you run one test and it's a bit off, and then you run two tests and it's the liquid going through the tubes or whatever. Yeah. And then by the time you run 5 tests, it's there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
But on this one, where is it? This was the first test. So I set up the tubes. I thought there was going to be some messing around. Straight away off the bat, almost bang on 0.2 versus 0.19 on the Hannah one.
Yeah. And
so and that's spot on. So I was very.
But was it like that for other tests afterwards, or was that just the luck?
Basically, so this is what it's telling me, right? So this is I'll make that a bit bigger. These are all of my test results. So 0.2, 0.2, 0.21, 0.19, 0.21, 0.17, 0.19, 0.19.
Yeah.
So, but this is it, again. This doesn't really tell you anything that you can't work out yourself. But that's what 7 tests. Oh, in fact, there's more as well. 1.8 has gone down to 7-8 tests in the space of 3 days. There is no way I would ever test my phosphate that often.
Will you have it testing that often permanently? No, I assume not.
No, I'm just doing it because I want to get used to it, so I know what I'm talking about when I do the review.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. There's also because every time it does a test, it doesn't return the reagent to your tank, and you mustn't do that because it's bad. And that means that it's withdrawing, I don't know, 50 milliliters or whatever it is for every test. So if you test it 100 times a day, you're just drawing out salt water. So that's bad.
How much is it? Only because everyone's saying they comment on the price. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
600 quid.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask people in the comments. What makes that overpriced? Just a genuine question. Like it's not the sort of thing that I personally myself. But what I'm saying is, like, if someone wants the ability to not have to test their phosphate, what value is that?
I'll tell you why. I think it is expensive. I don't think there's any getting away from it. But there are a couple of ways of looking at it. If the alkalinity testers, they're all about 800 quid roughly.
That's what I thought. They're the same for one parameter.
And we've been conditioned to, because you need a pH probe and all this. We've been conditioned to paying 800 quid for that. So we're used to it, and we're like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Even though that's expensive. For other parameters like calcium, magnesium, nitrate, and phosphate, you can get things like the Mastertronic.
Yeah.
And they are 1,200 quid, and they will test all of these things. So they don't just test one thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The downside of them is they're bloody. Have you seen them? They're massive.
I know they're massive. Yeah, yeah.
They're enormous. I saw one in the flesh. I thought the Alcatronic was big. This thing is huge. I just don't have space for it. It's about 10 feet tall.
You got too many tanks, that's why.
I know, yeah, exactly. It's just I thought about buying one a while ago, but they're just too big. This is small, but it is. But they're right. It is expensive. But anyway, but it's what the thing that it's shown me is that it's testing my phosphate all the time, and I can never be bothered to do that. And I changed my rower phos on my Fuzzy X the other day. And you can see at the point I changed it. It was after this test and before this one. So it went from 0.21 to 0.17. And then it bumped back up a tiny bit. But what I found interesting so far is this all of my results? I've tested a few times throughout the day, and I've never tested more than once a day in phosphate. Phosphate doesn't really change throughout the day. I tried testing before I fed, and then like an hour after I'd fed, no difference. So there's all these little things you're gonna learn from it. But the main thing I want is now I know if I add like an inch of Fuzzy X, whatever I've put in, I know how much it reduced it by. I'm going to leave it for a couple of days, assuming it's going to settle. Then I'll add another inch and keep doing it. And again, you can do this manually. It's just I've wanted to get my phosphate down, but I can never be bothered to test that regularly. And I start off thinking, right, I'm going to do it twice a week. And that lasts a week, and then it's like,
but that's what I mean. So I'm not pro or against this. This isn't, as I said, this is it, but it's more of like, how does someone put a value on something? Because some of these people in the comments are saying, look, well, I have HANA checkers. I don't need these. Are you going to, if I said to you, you have to use your HANA checker every single day to test your phosphate, would you do it after 2 weeks?
There will be some people who will, but 99% won't. And I agree. The HANA checker is wicked. I love it. It is my favorite way of manually testing phosphate. But there's no way I'm testing 7 times a week.
I agree with you. See, as I said, it's not something that I would buy myself. I actually like manually testing. But
you're one of those people.
No, I do, because I like to. I don't know. It just feels like it's more. I don't know. It feels like it's more accurate. I don't know why. Like you know what some of the alkalinity checkers are like, where they give you a trend, they don't give you an accurate number. Now, if this is accurate, which it appears to be so far, then it's actually far more worthwhile, in my opinion, than one that isn't accurate.
Complete, and that's the trouble with this. With when I do this review, what I'll tell you everything that you kind of need to know to start with, but what you really want to know is it still accurate in 6 months? And I can't. I'll do that in 6 months' time, but I can't tell you that now. But with the alkalinity checker, my alkalinity checker is always half a DKH out, maybe even a bit more. But I don't really care if my alkalinity is 8 or 7. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Make an ounce of difference. It's as long as it's consistently 1 DKH out. I don't care about that. But with phosphate, I do care. And if it was reading 0.05 when it was actually 0, that's a problem. So this needs to be accurate. And so far, a week in, it's bang on. But anyway, so that's the first thing I've done, and I love the extra phosphate results. The second thing I've done with equipment, can you guess what it might be, Ryan?
No. Is it your lights?
Yeah, I changed my lights.
Yeah, you changed your lights, and you put those blades on, didn't you?
Yeah, but just before everybody screams at me and laughs and calls me a moron, it's not on my main tank.
No, it's on your water box, isn't it?
On my water box, exactly right. And I've had the same light on that tank for 2 years, which is not bad going for me. But what I've done is I needed what I found was I was getting shading at the bottom. And so I needed some lights to flank my main light. So I bought 2 AI blades, and I decided whilst I was at it, I was going to change the reef flare for a Kessel, because I like Kessel shipping.
You're obsessed. You're obsessed. I've never ever looked at a tank and gone, oh, look, there's a bit of shade there. I need to add a light. So never.
To be fair, it was generally fine, but it's like there are a couple of corals that you couldn't really see. They look shaded. Whereas now I can see their color much better. The best example of which is that one. This is a top fuel for Vites, I think it's called. And like before, it was in the dark, and now it looks awesome. But
yeah. I just, as I said, you know me, I'm not that interested in lights, but you love them. So
we'll move on.
The only thing I would say, have you adjusted your hanging kit? You must have adjusted it to.
I made a new one. So
before made.
Yeah. So before
did you
this was
3D print it?
Yeah, well, part of it. This is the Reef Factory one. So this was the one that I had for my Reef Factory one, but this is made specifically for that light.
Yeah.
So I had to make a bracket, and I used the Reef Bright Make end brackets, which is so I used professionally made end brackets, but then I had to 3D print a couple of bits to hold. I bought a bit of aluminium profile from B&Q, and then I had to 3D print a couple of things to hold those in place. So there, 3D printing is so bloody useful. I love it.
If you know how to use it, it's like, on like with a camera, I buy it and then just I try it and then just leave it there.
But I've enjoyed getting used to it. So I've been printing stuff for about a year now, and when you first start, you have one bit of success and you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah. But
then you quickly realize you don't know squat.
Yeah.
And now I'm a year in, I'm actually all right. I can figure out what works and what doesn't work.
How do you design it on a computer program or something?
There's 3D rendering software. It's quite the stuff I use is really basic. But yeah, you design your own shapes, you measure it. It's actually quite easy, but it takes a little bit of time. But it's brilliant. And first, I couldn't have done that without this. I would have had to. What I would have done instead would have looked janky as hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. Reef Dork, are you this much of a tinkerer in other aspects of your life? I am. This is the thing. I tinker absolutely everything. I constantly want to like incrementally make everything slightly better. Absolutely everything.
When I was last at your house, you said to me, "Look at this like special device which moves the camera over slowly." It was like, and I think it was quite expensive, and I was just like, "What was the point?" Do you use that?
Occasionally, not often. It was a camera slider.
Was it worth the money?
No.
No,
not for the standard of videos I make.
You just like having stuff. I think that's what we are total opposites. You see something, you go, "Oh, that's shiny. I need that," and I'm like, "Oh, that's shiny. Oh no, I'd rather not buy it."
But so I do that, and like with this camera slider, I do use occasionally, but not all the time. Yeah. And then I found because the camera slider is great, but you have to have it sat down. So what I want is something I can hold, move the camera around. So I bought a gimbal.
Yeah.
And then that does similar kind of things. And like, it's just, but this is the thing, I tinker with everything. And I always try to get the next thing that might make things 1% better. So yeah. I do.
If it works for you, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. If it's stupid, but it works, then it's not stupid.
I imagine you've just got this room of all this old stuff where you've improved it by 1%. There's just a load of old stuff lying around, camera equipment and things like that.
So that's where you and I differ as well, because I throw stuff away or sell stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I like to hoard it because I'm like, I couldn't need this protein skimmer, which I got 7 years ago one day.
Yeah, exactly. No, I get rid of. I am going to keep the light that I took down to replace with the Kessel.
Yeah.
But ordinarily, I just if I replace something, I get rid of it.
It's well worth it anyway. It's worth keeping some things because, especially for things like pumps and stuff, because at some point everything fails, everything goes eventually.
Yeah. Well, actually, so I bought a Kessel. I bought it secondhand. It's a little A360.
Yeah.
But a couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, I had two big Kessels, the A500s, and I decided to sell them. I'd hung on to them for ages thinking, well, I might use them on another day. And then I was like, nah, do you know what, sod it. Someone messaged me and I sold it. And now I've done this. So I had to then, after that, I had to go and buy it back again.
I did the same thing with my Radeon Gen 4s. I think they're on Gen 6s. No, I think they were Gen 4s. So they must be 6 years old, maybe even longer. But I just kept them because going, I might need them someday, even though I've got 36 in the coral farm.
Yeah.
So
I decided I don't regret selling the 500s because I decided, you know what, if I do get rid of them, I can just buy one secondhand, and I won't actually. It'll cost me the same money, and so I didn't. It's not like I lost money. I didn't buy another brand new one.
Yeah.
So and I'm quite comfortable buying secondhand equipment, Jimmy.
Do you have spare return pumps?
Yes.
Ah, good. See, this is one of those things where, and this is for everyone in the chat, like, it's worth having a spare return pump, because at some point, well, for me anyway, remember I have 5 on the systems, and one failed at like 11 o'clock on a Sunday, or on a, like, so I couldn't just get one next day. So I always have a spare Vectra L1, L2.
Fancy.
Yeah, well, I've got 5 of them, so
yeah, okay.
And I had a spare one, so I was lucky because I could replace it.
People often talk about having spare heaters and spare return pumps. And return pumps is a big one.
Yeah,
I do have spare return pumps, but it's not like I've got a Vectra L1. I've not got the same one that I could swap out.
That's what I was going to say. You don't need the same one. You just need one to keep the water moving.
That's the thing. You'd have to involve. I might actually end up having to go out and get some plumbing or whatever. It's much better if you can just go L1, swap out L1, done.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm not so fussed about that, and I went through a stage of having dual return pumps on 2 of my tanks.
Yeah.
Because I was like, do you know what? If one fails, it doesn't matter. It's just going to keep going.
Yeah.
But I decided in the end to get rid of that. And ultimately, if my return pump fails, I'm going to know about it. And so I can just order it and get it delivered next day, or I can go to my LFS and get it the same day. So that's why I don't bother having one spare.
Last question before we move on, because I know I'm known for like dragging, like for delaying us basically.
Yeah.
Do you have a box or a room full of just random junk?
I've got like 10 rooms. Everything.
Well, like I know, like a meter of pipe work that you just can't throw away because one day you might need it.
Oh God, the amount of plumbing joints and cables, plugs.
Can you imagine what was left over from the coral farm? I literally couldn't bring myself to throw away some of these valves. They were like £70 each for those big ones. And I got a couple of spare ones because we changed the design. I'm never going to use them, but I can't throw them away.
But you might do, because the thing. So I recently threw away. I had a couple of gate valves and some plumbing that went to it, and I chucked them away after 2 or 3 years. I was like, you know what? I keep thinking, what if I need it? I just throw it away. And then like a month later, I decided to make something. I needed to make something with that, and it was like, so I've got a ton of like John Guest tubing. I've got various different size silicone tubes, plugs. The amount of plugs I've got, and like power supplies. I build up a bank of power supplies.
The multi plug socket ones. Yes,
everything.
I know.
I've got about 1 million different multi sockets.
Only reefers walk into like B&Q and go, 6 plugs on one extension cord. Wow.
They've all got switches on them. Yeah.
Yes. Isn't it funny how we think about things? I actually have another question as well, but I'm not going. I'll let you. Is there stuff that you use which is not designed for reefing?
Oh yeah, loads of stuff. I can't think of stuff off the top of my head, but yeah, probably loads.
So this is just very, very quickly the best frag clippers you can get. The very best ones are not. I've used ones which are like £80, which went rusty. What you want to do? Go to Boots and buy I think they cost like £2.50. Nail toenail cutters are incredibly sharp and they don't rust and they are amazing. And I use it. No. They're like they're like normal. They're literally like bone cutters.
Okay. Okay.
But once I found those, I've never had to replace them. And I said I got some from Macna, which were, I think they were £70 because I was like, these are like some proper heavy duty ones. Yep. And after a period of time, they're rusty. Yeah, so you can't use them. For some reason, the toenail cutters don't rust.
That's so funny. I looked around the room to see. There's loads of stuff I've got. The only thing that's in the room that I can see is a cordless Dremel. Cordless. Which one is this? Is this the?
It looks like it's come from Star Wars.
I know, yeah. Or a Maritalade. This is the 8220, and it's just so bloody good. I had a corded Dremel for years, and I almost never used it because the process of having to get out of the box and then plug it in, and there's never a plug available, so you've got to go into a different room. It's a pain in the arse. Whereas this has got the wrong wrong lid on it at the moment. The wrong
Think about other things, I think, aren't you?
I know, yeah. If you need there's a diamond tipped blade. It's about 20 quid. It's quite expensive, but it's brilliant. And it's so good for fragging. So firstly, some acros are so thick you need a saw for them.
Yeah.
But also, even when they're not, being able to frag a perfectly flat surface on an acro is great because then it doesn't, like, if it's at an angle, it will fall off the frag plug when you glue it on. It's just wicked. So good.
Anyway, no more random questions.
Anyway, yeah, we'll move on. All right, which means we're moving on to member questions and Facebook group questions. So there's only one thing I wanted to pull up from the Facebook group this week, but there are two questions from the members on the YouTube channel. First is from Shamila Butters, who says, planning to get 2 Mocha Storm clownfish for the water box 10 gallon. Oh, that's quite small. A saffron clown goby. Ooh. And a Pedersen cleaner shrimp from a ranch type place. What should I look for when ordering them? We'll come on to that because that's when we're talking about ranch type stuff. So we'll answer that, but I'll come back to that. Second question is from Tyler Evans, who says, can you discuss the pros and cons of chemical cures approaches? I feel like a good portion of the reef hobby would be okay giving a cat or dog pills to take medicine themselves, but insists on a natural cure to everything in a reefing hobby. Why insist on bloodletting instead of state of the art? And I replied saying, is there anything specific in mind or just generally? And he didn't reply. So, but I think he obviously just means generally.
There is a strong case for antibiotics in reef tanks, like strong case. It works. It just does. Mm-hmm. You can't get them very easy. The antibiotics that people are using, especially in America, is ciprofloxacin. Yeah. There you go. Now, that does absolutely do something to your corals. 100%. I know other coral farms use it. I know wholesalers use it. It's very difficult to get hold of. It is
in the UK.
In the UK, it's probably difficult to get hold of over there. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's Queen of Reef used it. She dosed it into her tank.
Yeah, people
straight
do
into the tank.
Yeah,
and I think it like helped her torture. I can't remember what it was, but
yeah,
it was fine.
There is a noticeable difference almost immediately. Now, I don't know if the reason we're using Cipro is because one day someone went, I'm going to throw this in and see what it does, and other antibiotics, because things like amoxicillin or things like that, would they work in the same way? I don't know.
I suspect it was someone who had a bit of knowledge about that, a doctor or a vet or whatever, and they thought, let's try this.
But why specifically that one?
I don't know enough about that side of it. I was in hospital the other day with my hand. One of the doctors mentioned ciprofloxacin, and I gave myself a little smile, and I was like, I know what that is. I don't, but I've heard the word.
I know what it can do, is what you thought.
Yeah, I know what it can do to corals. But I like that question because I often I don't want to just pour in chemicals unnecessarily when a natural remedy will do. But people get a little bit obsessed with that idea, and I'm probably guilty of that myself in the past. When the reality is, what do you think the alkalinity bottle is, or what are the trace elements and all that sort of stuff? You know, there's like calquasa, that's a chemical, calcium hydroxide. So there's all sorts of things that you do, and just for some reason we get selective about certain things. But I think it's generally a good thing to be selective.
Yeah,
because like cyanobacteria, for example, if you can beat that naturally without upsetting anything, just restoring your nutrients to the correct levels and those sorts of things, rather than putting in ChemiClean, that is a better way to deal with it, because ChemiClean will have side effects.
Well, ChemiClean, they think, is also an antibiotic. It doesn't say on the box it is.
So some people dose very, very small amounts to the tank for that reason.
Yeah, because they were talking about it on BRS. And even the people on BRS were going, well, no one really knows what this is, but there's an assumption it's something to do with that. And if you look on the box, it doesn't say, it says cleans red algae stains. It doesn't say kills cyanobacteria. It's worded in a very specific way. I said I literally watched it the other day. I didn't look too much into it. But yeah, it's just it's interesting. They point out how it's worded. And I looked, and it's true. It's worded like that.
But that's but if you use ChemiClean in the way it describes to get rid of cyano, it will do other stuff to you. For a start, your skimmer goes crazy. And it'll make your corals sulk, and it can kill clams. It can have really deleterious effects. So if you can kill that the natural way, then it's better. But I tried that for about 3 months on my main tank when it was about a year old. I just couldn't beat it. So I used ChemiClean and it fixed it. So I think it is generally better to try to avoid pouring stuff in if you can make a natural cure. Like if you could beating any pest, manual removal or a predator is the best way for anything, whether it's algae, flatworms, whatever, Aptasia. I found an Aptasia in my water box. Anyway,
have you?
Yeah, just one tiny one. It's about 1 centimeter long. Anyway, so generally that's manual removal and a predator is the best way to deal with those sorts of problems. And I would always generally go for natural remedies before chemicals. But people often, and I've probably said it myself before, people often get a little bit too keen on the idea that anything that's a chemical is a terrible idea, when the reality is we actually pour in loads of chemicals. So I think there are certain chemicals for treating algae. Is it Flux RX that does bryopsis? That I can't remember, but there are some. There are plenty of things that are really good and do exactly what they're designed to do, and don't have harmful effects. And then there's other things like Vibrant, for example, that actually does work very well. But if you use it incorrectly, it's an algicide. But so generally, I would say I personally avoid chemical cures and approaches to fixing problems when I can, but you shouldn't rule it out completely.
I like a natural cure. I don't know why. It's like it's almost it's like an organic approach to reefing. I like it also because
you getting all hippie.
No, it's not that. No, I like that. This is genuinely what I like. Okay, so hypothetically speaking, you could put in Vibrant to clear hair algae, or bubble algae is what it's known for. Once you stop dosing it, there's the potential it can come back, or you can re-add. If you can re-add it from a different coral or from a new source. If you put something in there that eats bubble algae, you're good to go. And there are many tangs eat bubble algae. People have this assumption that bubble algae is one of the ones that's really difficult to get something to eat it. There are loads of fish that eat bubble algae. I have a purple tang, a fox face, a sailfin tang, and a convict tang that all eat it. So, and some of the other ones would eat it as well, like the powder blue would eat it as well if I give it to it. So it's not hard to find something that will eat it. And I don't think you need... I tried Vibrant, I didn't like it.
No.
And this was before
there was any fuss came out. But you can also put like things like I've got a one spot fox face in my water box, which is 2 foot by 2 foot by 16 inches tall. It's a small one, and it's been in there for at least 6 months, maybe a year, and it's still stayed quite small. It'll outgrow it, no doubt.
Can you hear the sirens?
I know, yeah. Woo, woo. I've also got a coal tank, not a coal tank, a Tomini.
Oh, good.
And so they will both outgrow that tank at some point. But it's going to be a while. And I've got no problem. And I put them in there to get rid of algae like that, and they do a wicked job.
And it's a permanent solution until you have to move them on, whereas a chemical solution wouldn't necessarily be permanent.
This is very true. And so Aptasia in my main tank, now my copper band's gone. I know it's in the something in the weird box where the copper band couldn't get to it. At some point, might be 6 months, it might be 2 years, it'll come back.
I know what you mean.
But when you had a natural predator in there, it's fine. Whereas if you were going in with what's the stuff, Joe's juice or Aptasia X, it's not going to get rid of it.
I wonder, because your copper band went downhill, didn't it? Like, and before it died, it got thinner and thinner and thinner. And that's why I wondered that's why I mentioned, I was going to talk about this earlier, if there was something that you changed, even if it was something like adding more flow to the tank that could have done that, because you've had it for years, didn't you?
Yeah, I think that. So I didn't. In fact, if anything, my flow's got worse because since I broke my hand, I've not cleaned the power heads, and they are they're filthy. I have turned them up a tiny bit, but I don't think that would have been enough. But the only thing I noticed was that there was a lot less microfauna.
No, I remember you saying.
Yeah, so but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's generally. I think we would generally say, go for natural approaches and avoid chemicals.
Yes,
but I would agree with. I think what Tyler Evans is saying is, look, mate. If there's a cure that works, use it. Don't get too stressed about it. And I would agree with that.
A lot of people say that chemically is very, very good for cyanobacteria, and you just said it worked for you.
It worked a charm. yeah, it made my tank a mess for a week or so, but it sorted the cyano, and that wasn't. I tried for months to get rid of that otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. But the second time I had cyano, I got rid of it without using chemically. I just got my nutrients back up, maintained them.
Yeah.
Bit more flow, job done.
There you go.
So, but yeah, I take the point. The reason I asked if there was something specific you wanted to talk about, because if there's something like chemically, and it's easier to talk around it then. But if it's just a general approach, well, it varies on. If there's 10 pests, 9 pests I might say use a natural one. 1 pest I might say use a chemical. So, but anyway, but that's, I think, we probably both.
Yeah, you can't buy something that will get rid of cyanobacteria. You can't, as in you can't buy a fish or something that will get rid of it.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. Okay, and the one thing I wanted to bring up from the Facebook group was the most common post of the last week, which is temperature. So Matt Cripps says, when do I need to start worrying about tank temperature? Mine hit 28.5 yesterday. So for those of you outside of the UK, we've had what you might call a heat wave for the last week, or what you might call the summer for the last week. And it got to about 30 degrees. Is that 100 Fahrenheit, something like that? No, it's in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
It got to, it was not 32 degrees, something like that. So it got pretty hot. And lots of people fussing about temperature. Oh, no, thanks.
Are you ready for it to be over, the heat?
No, I'm enjoying it. It's
I don't like the heat. I'm waiting for it to cool down again.
But so temperature for me isn't an issue with tanks. So I've got fans on all of my tanks. I didn't on the Cade. I didn't have fans on it until this week.
Yeah.
And I put those they're Amazon PC fans made by LU10, 20 quid. And I bought recently for my water box, I bought the new Tunzi Eco Chic fan, cooling fan, or whatever it's called, 100 quid.
Yeah.
And those tanks with a 20 quid fan and a 100 quid fan are exactly the same temperature.
Yeah. Same. So I started obviously the quarantine tank on the worst possible week you could set up a small tank. And it's upstairs as well, where I don't where it's hotter. So, and I put my old fan on it, and yours is exactly the same. Yeah, down to it's 25.5. So
yeah, so my temperature went up from 24 to 25.5, and that's it. And that's totally fine. And I don't have problems with temperature anymore because I just have a fan. And when it gets really hot, close your blinds or your windows, close your curtains, blinds, and windows closed. Put your fan on, and it's easy.
Get your Ted Baker box out.
Get your Ted Baker box out. Put it on the
window.
outside. Yeah, exactly. So that's the easy way of fixing it.
Yeah.
The question was 28.5 degrees. What point should I start worrying? That is the point I would start worrying, maybe even a bit earlier.
Yes.
You might be fine. And my tank temperature got to, last year when it was like 42 degrees in the UK, hottest ever.
Yeah.
My tank got 28, something like that. And I started to get worried, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
But there were plenty of people around the 28, 29 degree mark who have serious problems like wipeouts, or killing certain corals. So that's the point I'd start to get worried.
I think I've had it at 29 before, I think, but not. It was an all soft coral tank.
Okay.
This was a long time ago. Do you know what's interesting? Again, with the quarantine tank, I have, for some reason, I thought I'm going to buy 3 different ways of checking temperature. They're all different. Every single one of them is different by about a degree. Some by a degree and a half. They're just completely random. So I don't know which one's correct.
So you can buy calibrated thermometers, but they're quite expensive.
Yeah.
The most accurate one that if you want to know, like, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. But if you really want to know, the best one to get from a hobby point of view is by Sarah, S-E-R-A, Sarah, whatever it is.
Okay.
And it's called a Sarah. What's it called? It's a manual one. It's a what's that stuff that's mercury?
Oh yeah.
It's what's it called? Sierra Precision Thermometer. They're 7 quid. This is it. Hang on, it's just loading on eBay. That's it. It's just a mercury reader, but they're dead accurate. So if you really want to know, buy one of those. It's not as easy to read as a digital gauge, but you could buy one of them. You can see it, and then you know.
There you go.
But I don't really care. If it was 1.5 degrees out, I think that would bother me actually.
I think it was because it's a small tank for me. It was really hot. I was like, let's just make sure I get this right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. But there we go. That was the only thing I wanted to pull out from the
you run your tank at 24.
Sorry?
Do you run your tank at 24?
These two that are LPS, and that one's got GSP in it as well. I run them at 24. The main one I run at 25, 25.2 or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, mine's 25.5. I just thought, because I always thought that like 26 was what most people did it as, and I thought 24 was quite low.
I used to run my main tank at 26.
Yeah.
And I dropped it to 25 because I just thought, what's the point? Because you probably cost for every degree you go higher, it costs a lot of money to run it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what's the point of running at 26? I'm going to run it at 25.
Yeah.
No real reason, but I don't think there's any better. It's not better or worse to run it at 25 or 26. I don't think. People talk about the higher the temperature being higher energy, so your corals will grow quicker.
Yes,
but also there's less oxygen, so if you have a power cut, it'll run out quicker. So, so 25, just whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's 25 downstairs on the main tank, aqua tank. Yeah. But LPS apparently do better. I've seen lots of people who know what they're talking about say LPS do better in cooler waters.
So not us.
No, exactly. When they're in the wild, they are in cooler waters. And so I run these at 24. Whether it makes a difference, who knows? But if it saves a bit of electricity as well, great. And it makes the corals happier. So but there we go. So so that was the Facebook stuff, which means we are now on to the most important Prestige Reef Fish of the Week ever.
Oh no.
That you've let me down on.
I did let you down.
What was the plan originally?
Well, no, you sent me a message yesterday evening saying I want to replace my regal angelfish because it's eating the corals, and pick me a fish which will replace it. Mm-hmm. Now, the only thing I could think of was another regal angelfish, because if you've got one that eats coral, you might get another one that doesn't eat coral. I also thought a gold flake angel, maybe, because some of them are like semi-reef safe, but the chances are most of them are going to nip at. They're not going to eat the corals, but they'll nip at the polyps. So, and then
that's the issue. The regal angel is just nipping at my SPS polyps. And the trouble is, so I made a video about my favorite acros this week. And when you go back and look back at old videos of your tank, you realize how awesome it was at X point.
Yeah.
And all my polyps are out much, much more. Well, all the time, and they're just not now. I was like, oh, I missed that.
But do you care enough?
Maybe. I love that
they're
fish.
Not dying, and the polyps just come out at night instead of during the day, because that's probably what's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's what happens in the wild.
And they look much cooler when they've got the polyps out. Some, like the Sunset Millie, looks so cool with its polyps out. And I've just bought a Tyree Pink Lemonade. Yeah. When it's got polyps, it looks amazing. When it hasn't, it just looks quite cool.
Yeah.
But I'm not decided yet, but I was considering it, which is why I was asking you. And I wanted to avoid a consultation fee.
Yeah. So, and then I started thinking of some different like dwarf angels. I don't even see. Yeah. You don't want tangs, and you like that angel because it's pretty coloured and it's interesting, and also it's a little bit risky. But so it's difficult aggressive. Because are you saying replace it with a similar fish, or you're saying replace it with a completely different fish?
It can be completely different. I think if I was going to choose, I'd go with a yellowtail tamarin wrasse or a gold spot rabbitfish.
Yeah. So why are you asking me? We got different tastes in fish.
I'm interested.
No, and the other thing I thought of one of the swallowtail angels. We've spoken before about the Japanese angels and things like that.
Yeah.
Which
actually, that's not a bad shout. What's the one you can get hold of?
The swallowtails. They're just normal swallowtails.
Yeah, actually,
you get male and female ones. Although the male ones often, for some reason, the male ones are always massive. The females do change into the males, but the males can also change back into the females. So Jamie had a male and a female, and now he has two females, and now I think they fight each other. So it's like, this isn't. I think that's the case. They might not fight each other all the time. I'm pretty sure when I was there last, they were chasing each other. When originally they were a pair.
Yeah, okay. But a Genicanthus angel is not a bad idea. Maybe a Bellis. I don't know. That's not a bad shout, actually. Yeah,
I thought about one of those because then you won't have any trouble. And then I had two fish for what I actually would have the fish of the week. And I'm going to. Have you got a picture up of what I said? Because I'm going to change it.
I'm good. I'm ready to type.
Okay, I'm going to go for a Hawaiian boxfish because this is what I've been thinking all day. The male Hawaiian boxfish are blue, and the females are black. They are more difficult to keep than the normal yellow boxfish. I'm not entirely sure why. They are prone to some diseases, so when selecting them, like choose carefully.
Right.
They're known same as other boxfish. They're known for white spot. Even that boxfish right there has white spot in that picture.
Well, this one.
No, if you go to the very top, the
yeah,
yellow
so
one.
it does.
It does,
yeah.
Aquarium.
Yeah. Oh, how funny! It's a good photo though.
So
anyway, this is the Hawaiian brine.
Yeah, the male ones are the blue ones. For some reason, they're always considerably larger. I don't know if they change sex, and that's why the males are always bigger. But generally speaking, you see tiny, tiny little females, but you hardly ever see tiny, tiny. In fact, I've never seen a tiny male. So, and I just think they're a cool fish. So, you know me, I like boxfish.
They are, without question, a cool fish. Yeah, I like them. So that's a good prestige reef fish of the week. But then, I mean, no one's going to buy them for all the reasons you've just said.
I would buy one. I actually would buy one if I could get it from another reefer where they've had it for a period of time, and I know they're not easy to go through quarantine. I already looked into it. They don't, they don't like copper.
Okay.
So, and then we go on to the coral of the week.
Yeah. We can do the coral of the week.
And the coral of the week I've decided to go for sun coral. And the reason I went for a sun coral was because last night I was in the coral farm and I realized I had a sun coral, which I probably imported about 6 months ago. And it's just because in the day its polyps are closed, I just don't notice it. And then I was in the coral farm in the evening last night and it was fully open. And I was like, oh, I forgot I had you.
How funny.
Now, I don't specifically feed it. And there is definitely they definitely do better if you do feed them. I don't know why it survived so long without me feeding it. So if you're considering one of these corals, I would strongly advise feeding them. Otherwise, the chances are they won't survive. And yeah, they open up at night, so they're also a pain in the ass. But you said if you put them in the shade, maybe it'll open up in the day, which is in theory possible.
Yeah. I just clicked on a thing that I saw at the top of the screen that I was curious about. Incredibly rare 24K gold fascination favia.
Yeah.
Does that look like just a normal fascination favia?
It does look like a normal. Yeah.
250 quid.
Yeah. I mean, it's got quite a lot of gold on it because you've seen they're all different colors. So it's probably just a fascination favia that's kept in the right environment.
And probably a photo with a tiny bit of saturation on it.
Oh, yeah, it could be that.
And then there's this one as well, 760 quid for a Zoa garden.
Wow.
And that looks to me like a photo I've seen on the internet before. I'm sure it's not, but that's crazy. 700 because
in 6 months as well.
Yeah, bams. Yeah. Dragon eyes. Yeah. And in 6 months' time, there'll be one of those taken over.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Anyway. So sun coral is the prestige reef coral of the week.
Yes, but remember, non-photosynthetic means you have to feed them. That's
which you've not done.
No, I have not done it. And look, as I said, I've had it probably for 6 months, but that doesn't mean it's healthy. So don't do what I do. Don't buy one going, oh, Ryan said I don't need to feed it because he doesn't feed his one.
Jay's Real Reef has got sun coral that he does feed. I don't know if he's kept up feeding it, but I think he puts a little cut-off Coke bottle over the top and then feeds it. Which is
and shrimp go and nickel. Someone described them as vending machines, where the fish and shrimp worked out that if you beat them up, they get the food back out.
Oh, how funny.
I think that was Tidal Gardens who said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the Prestige Reef Fish of the Week and the Prestige Reef Coral of the Week, which now brings us on to the news. And we have got some news this week, actually. It's definitely picked up in the last, couple of weeks. It's been noticeably busier. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Practical Fish Keeping magazine, which is mostly a freshwater magazine, but they do some saltwater stuff, have brought out, they're running their annual LFS awards, Local Fish Up Awards. And you can go and vote for vote for your favorite online retailer, your favorite coral retailer. You know, you could vote for the number one UK, the number one website in the UK, for example. And I've put a link in the description below, so you can go and vote for your favorite whatever. There's loads of categories. You don't vote for Prestige Reef. You can if you want.
No, it's because you put a post out, didn't you? Whereas I wouldn't even try to win this because I don't think I would. There's no chance I'll win it. So whereas you put a post out just to see. But
I've put a link in the description to vote. You can vote for whoever you want. That's fine.
What did you vote for me for? Because you said you voted for me and you voted for someone else, but I
voted for you and Signature Frags as one of them. I can't remember which way around it was. One was favorite coral seller. One was favorite online seller.
Okay.
And I think most people would interpret online seller as dry goods. But
okay.
I decided to interpret it. I wanted to vote for both of you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
think I voted you as coral seller.
Let's put it this way: I didn't vote for myself. I was in.
You got to vote for yourself. But there's like 10 categories. It's a fun vote, regardless of who you vote for. It's a fun vote.
I mean, to be fair, it would be fun to see the effect that you would have, like social media can have on something. And to be fair, I've seen Charterhouse has sent out a thing to all their customers saying "vote for us," and they must have thousands and thousands of people. So that their email accounts
don't tend to have such loyal followings as social media people, as YouTubers.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But anyway,
I don't want to go into it in case I lose. So
well, you're entered. I've entered you. So anyone who votes for you. But anyway, I think it'd be really cool if about 5,000 people watch this stream. So if 5,000 people were to vote for Prestige Reef, that'd win him. So do me a favor.
Go and do it now. There you go.
But anyway. So that's the first thing. There's a fun. So the link in the description. There's a fun vote, and you can vote for your favorite, all sorts of categories, and it's really cool. And I'm interested to see who wins those. I occasionally think about buying practical fish keeping, but it's like 90% freshwater.
Yeah.
And the marine stuff is generally aimed at freshwater keepers who might be interested in marine.
Yeah.
It's a shame though, because I think they do it. It's a really good magazine, and I'd like it if they did like a 50% marine one or whatever, but it's too niche, I guess. But second piece of news: 52 weeks of reefing, second edition from BRS, had its 4th or 5th video this week, but
it wasn't a video, really.
This is the thing. It's 52 weeks of reefing. The point of it, as far as I'm concerned, is every single week they put out a video. They're normally 10 or 15 minutes long, and they're a certain type of video, but it's every single week. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. First week is skimmers, second week is lights, third week is algae, whatever. This time, they didn't call it week 4 because that's what we're up to. They just said 52 SE. It's a conversation with Joe Caparata from a coral farm, not top shelf.
Unique corals.
Unique corals. Yeah, something like that. Really interesting video, but it's not 52 weeks of reefing. That for me is, they've been doing these chats for ages. They're great. I watch them all. Yeah. But it's just it's not a 52 weeks of reefing video, and it's just
give them a break.
What's
that? I agree with you, but give them a break.
But this is the thing. It just has what I'm saying is it just hasn't got going.
Like so now it's now 51 weeks.
Well, it's 49
gone
weeks
now
because the first 3 weeks of 52 weeks of reefing,
are
just kind of showing you what they're doing. They're set up. They don't tell you anything. You don't learn anything. And now they've done these ones, and this isn't 52 weeks of reefing. They're dressing up, and they're not even calling it week 4. So the point I've written down is 52 weeks interrupted, not got going yet, and I feel like it's not hit its stride yet.
There was a discussion actually. Ryan had a discussion with someone about the grouper tank. You know, with the remember I said there's a possibility that they could put something that wouldn't necessarily it's still a grouper. No. Trust me, he didn't say what grouper it was, but he went, if they get eaten, they get eaten. That's what happens in the wild. so it's definitely not like what.
So he's going for like a 6-foot grouper that'll just like.
He literally just went, look, if they get eaten, if I fail, I fail, but at least I tried. So chromists feel differently about that for some reason.
Okay, so it's going to be a miniatus or a lineatus?
They didn't say, but I assume it probably will be. I don't think it'll
most
be
people are speculating.
Yeah, because they're red with the blue spots, aren't they? So they're the nicest one.
Okay, fair enough. Some groupers in the wild are bloody enormous,
and ugly as well.
Yeah, like you're terrified to swim near them. But that's a shame. But I just think it needs to get going. And this is not lived up to my expectations. I had massive expectations of this, and maybe because we're still in the summer, more or less, so it's still people are doing other things other than fish tanks. So maybe in the next few weeks it'll start getting busier when people get more interested in it. And maybe that's the plan. But I just feel like it hasn't started properly.
Yeah.
But all right, 2 other pieces of news, and you are going to bloody love this, Ryan, because they're both equipment.
Oh, good.
One of them, it's not really news. So there's a Hydros X-10. It's an aquarium controller which you can plug in a pH probe, temperature probe, all that sort of stuff, and it's a dosing pump all in one.
Yeah, I've seen this.
But it's not really news because it's the announcement is that it's coming soon. It is soon to be released, and I'm sure I talked about that about a year ago when it was at Macna or something like that. So it's like it's not news because it's not a new piece of equipment, and it's not like you've heard about it but now you can buy it. It's just, oh look, this is coming. But it does look cool, to be fair. And the second piece of news is more equipment. Reef Factory are updating their dosing pumps. So this is going to replace the existing one. There's no timeline on when they're going to be available on this thing anyway, I don't think. I didn't read it properly.
Interesting design.
I think it looks quite cool. And there are actually a couple of things that are worth noting on it. So it'll do my dosing pumps. I bought recently, like about a week ago, I bought a Reef Factory dosing pump. And it can do up to 24. You can program it to do 24 doses per day, which is what most software does. This you can program up to 48 times, which I like. And it can go backwards as well as forwards, which is useful for some applications.
Yeah.
But the main thing I like about this, Reef Factory lately, all of their new stuff they've put on DIN rails. Do you know what a DIN rail is?
No.
It's like a spring-loaded rail. You put the rail you can drill onto your cabinet. It's really easy to line up straight. And then you just clip the piece of equipment onto it, and it like sits flush. They're so good, and this will have that as well, but it's not available in the shops yet. So there you go. Is
that phosphate tester available now?
Yes.
Okay, I just haven't seen it. I've not even seen it advertised, but I did notice you had one.
Yeah, you can buy it in the shops. Yeah, lots of people have been posting online about it.
Okay.
So yeah. Is that all of the news? Let me have a look. Hydros controller and the Reef Factory dosing pump. It is. So that's the news. Which means at 1 hour 12 minutes.
We're early today.
No,
I've been on my best behaviour.
Yeah, it's very impressive. We're on to the headline topic, which is making sure I don't run over the cat, which is ranch raised fish. And this was your suggestion. Where's my phone? I've lost my phone. This was your suggestion because it came from a post that Tropical Marine Centre, the biggest importer of corals and fish in Europe, posted on their Instagram page. And they've talked about this before. And I find this really interesting because ranch raised it sounds new, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
But I found out I've got an exact definition, so I can. The first thing I need to say actually is neither Ryan or I are experts on ranch raised fish, and every time we cover a topic like this, there'll be one like really pedantic.
Just wing it.
No, there'll be one thing that we say that's technically not quite correct, and there'll be someone in the comments who's like, "Oh, I think you'll find actually," and it's like, okay. So this isn't supposed to be an expert guide to all these ranch raised fish. But we do know enough to explain probably more than most people watching this who might not have even heard of it.
Yeah.
And we're just going to talk about it. So there is a definition, and this is basically there are 3 types of fish. There's captive bred, wild caught, and ranch raised. Ranch raised used to be called, or some people know it as tank raised.
Yeah.
But ranch raised is a definition, is a defined term from CITES. And I pulled up the definition. And the definition from CITES is rearing in a controlled environment of animals taken as eggs or juveniles from the wild, where they would otherwise have a very low probability of surviving to adulthood. And actually it goes on to give the French and Spanish words, which in French it's élevage d'orange, élevage en range, and in Spanish it's cria en granas.
There you go.
So
for all our French and Spanish listeners.
Exactly.
You now understand one word.
Exactly. It's basically scooping up eggs or, phyto, and what did you call it? Plankton. Scooping up plankton from the sea and grow and raising them.
I don't actually think that it's not well, it is scooped up, but I think they actually attract the plankton. Remember, I might be wrong. So
but this is what I mean. We don't have to be 100% exact,
From what I believe that fish, the larvae and plankton stuff is attracted to light. So they have these buckets, hypothetically speaking, out in the ocean.
Nets, whatever it is,
Yes, and they can catch anything in those buckets. So one day you might get what you're looking for, which is the eggs and things like that. And one day you might get a load of, I don't know, shrimp or something. It could be anything. And what they do is they take that mixture and then they put it into tanks and then they start feeding them the same way you would raise captive bred fish and see what starts to grow, basically. And then you have to bunch of stuff that you do and don't want. Now, in TMC's post, they posted it was humbug damsels. So my first recommendation is start hanging out where the frisky gem tangs are, because you might get, because humbug damsels are not overly expensive, but gem tangs are. Now they would have thought of this already. I think this is just something where they're practicing and they're starting the process. But when you see these fish and they come in, they are insignificantly small. Like they're literally like that sort of size. I know people on the podcast can't, but they're tiny. They're the tiniest fish that you've seen. And when you look at them, you're not even sure 100% what they are, because you might see 10 that look like humbugs, and then you might get 2 that are like, there's some sort of other damsel in there as well. And when they grow up, you could then separate them into different sections, and then you get rid of anything you don't want.
Yeah. And it's the first thing I like about it is the phrase ranch raised.
Yeah.
Because some people, when people say tank raised, people assume, because it sounds a bit like, people misunderstand, and it sounds a bit like you're talking about captive bred. And then when they find out that that's not what tank raised means, people are like, oh, you're trying to mislead me. And that's not what the term tank raised is, not trying to mislead people. But that's the circle you end up in. Whereas with the term ranch raised, it doesn't sound like captive bred, and it intrigues you to think, oh, ranch raised, what's that? Then you learn about it and So I like the term ranch raised because it's not confusing like tank raised is. And I emailed TMC actually to ask them about this, and they said they can't tell me anything more at the moment, but they've got more stuff coming out in the next, I don't know, week or 2 or whatever it is. So look out for that on through TMC, and we'll talk about it again if they talk about anything interesting.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic was to see if people think that this is going to be the future of our hobby. Because when I saw it, I was like, this probably is it. The fish that are ranch raised generally, I don't know for sure again, but are likely to be cheaper, because you're taking out a whole part of the process of having to raise the adults to a breedable size, keep them happy, and then collect the eggs. So you don't need to do that. So there's no cost attached to that bit. So in theory, they are cheaper.
And it's because, the couple of places I read about it, they were all saying, look, if you get, I think they worked out the numbers, and because of the way the ocean is, if you spray out like 1 million eggs, almost all of them get eaten or end up somewhere they can't live, all that sort of stuff. So if you collect those eggs, there's a I think the odds were 99.9% chance that those eggs will die within 2 weeks. So there's no harm. It's not like going out and pulling in 1,000 yellow tangs, which actually, to be fair, is done sustainably. But from the outside of the hobby, it's a bad look. Whereas with this, you're just taking something that was going to die anyway, basically.
Also, when you're taking, I know most of the fish that are in the hobby are juveniles, but they are closer to a breedable age than the eggs are, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, there's you're not taking out fish which are close to be able to reproduce themselves. Although I don't know how old a tang has to be to reproduce. Is it a year, 2 years, 10 years?
Quite young, I'd guess, but I don't know. The flip side of that is that if they've only got a 0.1% chance of surviving, and you were taking away half the eggs, then you're reducing that by half. But I think the reality is, when they do these collections, the amount they collect is just so insignificant compared to what's out there that it doesn't affect things. So, but
someone told me, now I don't know if this is correct or not, because you always have to question where information comes from. But there's someone who's been in the hobby for he owns a shop for years and years, probably 25 years. He's told me that they've been doing this with regal tangs for years. Now, on the website, I sent you a website, didn't I? And regal tangs are on that website. And that might explain why you get many people have seen this. Every so often, once a year, you get an influx of really, really tiny regal tangs, which are like penny sized. Now, I think that's what this is. Possibly.
I'd always wondered. Well, I hadn't always wondered. I just always found it weird.
Because you don't usually get tangs of that size, other tangs of that size, do you? They're normally a bit bigger.
Yeah.
So he told me that is what's happening. Again, don't quote me on this. There is a website where it does say it shows the different fish, which are tank raised and ranch raised fish, which I sent to you. And regal tangs are on that list. So in theory, some people are doing this. But yeah, so maybe some of you will have ranch raised fish in your tank already without even knowing. I bet they do. And there's actually, first off, if you're in the chat now, let us know what you think. Does this sound like the future of the hobby, or do you think it's, bearing in mind it's been going for a few years, so it's not just a fad, but what do you think about it? Do you think this is a good or a bad thing? The only thing, sorry. No, it's good. Keep going.
So it sounds to me to be almost, it solves a lot of the problems of captive breeding and of wild collecting.
Yeah.
The only problem it doesn't solve is that you still have to import them. So you still have to fly them across the world, which is bad for emissions or whatever. Because you can't find the plankton in. If you go dipping in the English Channel, you're going to get like cod. So
think about it this way though, and look, again, I've not put any thought into this. If you could fly the plankton, it must be much cheaper than flying all those fish.
It's very, very true indeed. So if you set up a facility over here, and the other thing is, the fish are much smaller. So even if you are flying those fish over, you're still flying much smaller fish, which means much less freight cost and weight to them. Yeah.
The only downside is they have to be raised to a saleable size, and that can take a few months, I assume, if it's a damselfish, or because I think, generally speaking, I think most fish in the hobby, like the tangs, are at least 6 months old. Because I've seen when the tangs are like translucent. Yeah. So it takes a certain amount of time for them to change to a certain color. So that's what they'll need to keep them in captivity for a period of time.
Yeah.
To be able
and
to
then
sell.
You're using electricity and all that sort of stuff. But
yes.
Those are some problems that exist anyway. So it's not like this is a new problem, but I think generally it all sounds net positive to me, and I really like it. Just sounds great. Just generally sounds very good.
Yeah. The one thing I am interested in is captive breeding comes with quite a few. The fish at first, especially with the first few batches of a new species, can be like not so good. Now, that might be because only a few of them survived, so they've kept the deformed ones alive, or maybe their practice has got better. I'd be interested to see if raising them in this way, are the fish healthier because they've got such a wide genetic variation coming from the ocean, or are they exactly the same way a percentage of them will be deformed?
Yeah, I would guess that it would be much, much better, because like with clownfish, 2 clownfish.
Well, all of them. Look at the first yellow tangs. The first yellow tangs were like some of them were like monsters, but they were being sold because these were the ones that survived. And then they have honed that skill, and the practices have got better. And now you have a whole range of almost like you can't tell the difference between the tank bred and collected ones, other than at first they can be slightly duller in color. But generally speaking,
when they've grown up.
Yeah, and generally speaking, if you put two next to each other, you couldn't tell the difference.
Okay, that's great. Someone said Agol77. Did you see the Parker's Reef stream last night? I didn't. He was showing some captive spawned LBS gunnies, hammers, torches, scullies, and acans. They look great and reasonable prices. So spawning corals is totally different to spawning fish. Yeah. So I think that spawning corals is probably the future, as in captive breeding corals.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, this ranch raising sounds better to me.
Yeah.
Than captive bred fish.
captive breeding some corals, if in terms of spawning them, I think is.
Why?
So I don't think not all corals need to be spawned to.
Oh, I see.
To be captive bred. Like fragging works very well for most things.
This is very true. Well, someone else earlier as well. I've lost the comment now, but someone else said that the balance is the best solution is part tank raised, branch raised, part wild caught, and part captive bred. That's probably the answer, because actually there are pros and cons of everything, and even wild collecting is actually good, because it sustains certain communities where there's no employment otherwise, and they don't have an impact on the environment, on the fish quantities and those sorts of things. So actually it's good, not necessarily bad.
I'm assuming those communities also will be included in the ranch raising process, potentially. I don't know.
It's very true. Someone did make the point, and again I've lost it, like there's too many comments coming in, they keep disappearing, but they did make the point, someone made the point that that it's removing fish from the food chain. Here we go. Can't be the future, as you're still taking something from the wild. The food chain of the ocean is impacted, which is true to a point, because lots of stuff eats plankton and relies on it. But I think the quantities that we're removing are just so minuscule. It's not even a drop in the ocean.
I would say that the ocean probably has a whole lot more issues than taking plankton out of it.
And I don't think this, and taking the tiny amounts, if the amount of people who kept fish tanks with saltwater was the same amount of people who had a cat or a dog, fair enough. But it's minuscule. So I don't think that's an issue. And I'm struggling to see a downside of this.
Well, think about all the plankton that's not being eaten by all the stuff that's being taken out for our food chain.
Yeah.
So all those food fish, they would be eating something. There's now a surplus of that because they're not eating it. And we've been decimating the ocean for our food for years. So in theory, we're actually probably helping the issue with regards to moving some of the plankton as well.
I had a really nice cod and chips on the weekend, actually.
And, see, you're talking to a vegetarian, so you know.
It's fish. You're allowed to eat that as a vegetarian, aren't you?
Vegetarians do not eat fish. Pescatarians eat fish.
Weird. Okay.
Any vegetarian that tells you they eat fish is not a vegetarian. Doesn't understand what vegetarianism is.
You eat bacon, though, right?
No.
Weird. Okay.
Haribo, however, delicious. Although Haribo are vegetarian now, I think.
Oh, are they? Okay.
Yeah. And before people start commenting, I'm not vegetarian because of the fish or the animals. I just genuinely don't like the taste. And that's how I've always been. Every
now and then, people ask me, they're like, oh, do you mind if I eat fish in front of you? Like if we're at a restaurant open, I'm like, no, it's fine. That's but yeah, there was one thing out, one other thing on the Facebook group that I was going to bring up, but I decided not to. Someone posted a thing, like a meme that said, name something that non-hobbyists say, and it was like these list of all funny things that people say when they come around and look at you, stuff like that. But yeah, cod is the worst to have from the sea. Cod is the worst to have from the sea.
I saw that
tastes nice.
I saw that post on the Facebook forum. Because one of the things that people say all the time, every so often you have a coral that's either not doing very well. Same with anywhere else. A coral farm is just a largest scaled up version of you. And sometimes you'll have a coral that doesn't do well or goes white. Someone walks in and goes, I love that white coral. I'm like, no, you don't want that white coral.
That happens all the time. Yeah.
I know. I genuinely believe that I could probably, if I had a whole tank full of white coral, I could probably sell more of it if it was people who didn't know what it was.
I see it the most with anemones.
Yeah,
like an anemone that is almost completely bleached, looks really white. Loads of people are like, I want that, and you're like, you really don't. But if you don't know the difference, if you're new to it, it looks cool. But yeah, so there's not much more I want to say on ranch fish. Really, it's another thing with these live streams. I see a topic I think is cool. There's probably 10 minutes of chatting about it. But there's actually not much more to say. So there's not an awful lot more I want to say. Anything else that you want to talk about on the point?
I genuinely think that this could be a significant part of the future of our hobby. I don't know how they'll be able to narrow it down to different species better. I assume that there's probably areas where certain fish are known to spawn, and then you can increase your chances of getting a load of yellow tangs. Or if quite often on the reefs, different tangs spawn at the same time as well. So you don't even need to like time it for a specific species. You just need to go in and collect a load of it roughly at the same time. That's how you get hybrid tanks, because they're spawning at the same time.
Okay. They'll work it out as well, because they'll find that certain fish are more active in March and other fish are more active in May. And then they'll find that certain fish are really attracted to strong light, other fish are attracted to dark light. And they'll work out. At the moment, it feels a bit like, and I'm sure it's not this way because it's been going for quite a while, but it feels a little bit like a lottery. Like you go and scoop up and see what we've got. I'm sure it's not quite like that, but it'll get better and better and better as it goes on. I wonder about cost, because given that there are plenty of ranch raised fish in the hobby at the moment, I've never noticed these particularly expensive ones. Like if captive bred fish are more expensive, no doubt.
Oh, and what the cost difference between them?
So so I think ranch raised, it looks like it's cheaper, right?
No, so you'll have wild caught at the moment is the cheapest.
Yeah.
Then ranch raised.
Yeah.
And then captive bred.
Yeah.
So
ranch raised and wild caught must be pretty close though, because captive bred are really expensive, nowhere near.
Yes, I think it's. I genuinely don't know. We're just speculating here, but I'm pretty sure that is what it will be. That structure. I don't know how close it will be, because it's still a lot more effort to raise something for a few months than it is just to go and collect it from the wild.
Yeah.
But I do think it's the other thing that's beneficial for this. There is still so much that we don't know about different species, and you see on reef builds and stuff like that, they go, "Oh, we managed to crack the yellow tangs, and we've managed to crack the purple tangs and the gem tang." Like, have you seen any captive bred gem tangs yet? I haven't. Why not?
I think so.
Because you would assume that they're the same, but the chances are they're not.
Yeah.
And so anyone who's doing research into this, like the rearing of juvenile fish, can help with other fish as well, which are being captive bred. So we've been able to spawn flame angels for a long time, but no one could raise them. It's been done like a long time ago now, but no one could raise them at first because we couldn't find a food that was small enough to feed them.
Yeah.
And it was only when they started to literally collect plankton from the ocean and was feeding the fry of the flame angels actual ocean stuff that were they able to start working out what they were eating. So to raise these fish in a ranch method, they must be doing research into all these different other things which will benefit the rest of the hobby, in theory, is what I'm speculating.
Fair enough.
Because if you think about it, the more successful they are, the more money they can make from it.
Yeah, indeed.
So eventually they'll be tank bred peppermint angels, and they won't be 30 grand. They'll be like
ranch raised
£15.
Oh yeah, you get a shoal.
Yeah,
get like 100, and you'd be like, if they die, I'll just buy another 100.
So in theory, once we've like properly nailed down captive breeding and raising things, it'll be like the freshwater hobby. You should be able to get basically anything.
Yeah, like billions of guppies in a massive vat.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're done, Ryan. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Not for me. Does anyone want us to talk? You have 1 minute. What are your suggestions for us to talk about next week?
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, so if you've got something you want us to talk about, so I always come up with the idea based on either conversations we have, something I've seen, or something that is suggested on the Prestige Reef Dork Show Facebook group, which you should join if you're not already a member. It's a really nice group. But if you've got anything you want us to talk about, put it in the chat now. We're going to knock on in a second.
Yeah.
And so if we've gone, put it in the comment section.
Yeah.
And
people are just naming fish. So
black tangs. All right. Well, there we go. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Ryan. Thank you at home for watching, and we'll catch you again next week.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.